The Interesting Conversations with Interesting People podcast series with author Nigel Beckles.
Welcome to the podcast.
Please like the podcast and subscribe to this channel. Thank you. The very best way to promote your podcasts. Podpage makes it easy to create a podcast website with just a few clicks. Every page is optimized to be found on Google and it stays up to date forever. For more information, visit podpage.com. The future of podcast promotion.
Have you experienced several failed relationships or been through a divorce? How can you avoid making the same mistakes again? How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes is out now.
Hi, my name is Nigel Beckles. My book is packed with practical and common sense strategies that you can use to make better relationship choices.
Now you can discover the dangerous myths about love. If your relationship expectations are realistic, why you could be falling in love for all the wrong reasons.
How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes. It's a book that could change your life.
Available from amazon.co.uk. Kindle version also available.
Author Queen P. When the Mood is Right, A Poetry Journey, Mood Swings, and When the Mood is Right, A Rebirth. Books available on Amazon and all good bookstores.
Hi, I'm Queen P., author of When the Mood is Right, A Poetry Journey, and Mood Swings. Please join me by tuning into my poetry podcast, The Royal Affair, on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, and all other similar platforms. You can also listen to the podcast on the Helium Radio Network on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You have entered into the Royal Affair.
Get ready for takeoff.
Welcome back to my Interesting Conversations with Interesting People podcast series. My guest for this episode is an astrology expert and also an author, Kevin B. Burk. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to my podcast series.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So where do you live at the moment?
I live in Houston, Texas, in the United States.
So where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. I don't have terribly large therapy bills. I was an unusual child as I've grown into a somewhat unusual adult. And I had a loving, supportive family. I got very involved in theater, but I was always kind of trying to understand myself and other people and how the world worked because I never quite felt like I was fitting in.
Well, you founded the Real Astrology Academy. You've also been involved with counseling, coaching, and teaching astrology since 1998. When and how did you first become interested in astrology?
Well, like most people, I was always, peripherally interested in astrology. It was always kind of, I read a couple of books and the idea of it was very intriguing. And in 1992, I was in a car accident. And with the settlement money, I bought a new Macintosh computer. And there was some money left over after purchasing the computer. And that had to go to something that was found money. It had to go to something fun. Couldn't go to like rent or clothes or something. And so I purchased some astrology software that I'd seen advertised in the back of Macworld magazine back in the days when there were, printed magazines about computers. And I started a business running these computer-generated astrology charts, and I had a little calligraphy font and did them on parchment paper, and it was just, that's kind of how I started. And then a few years after that, I found a teacher in San Diego where I was living and started my actual formal training as an astrologer.
Well, it's interesting you say that you started to do astrology charts because I actually got involved in astrology when I had my personal chart and a 12-month prediction.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with it, very impressed. And in fact, I have several books on astrology. One is Astrology for Lovers, Liz Green.
Yes.
The other one I have is The Secret Language of Birthdays, which is over 800 pages long.
Yes.
But it's an interesting book.
It is.
But as you know, many people are very skeptical regarding the merits of astrology. So how do you believe astrology can help people in their lives?
To answer that, I need to talk about the human game. I have been fighting with astrology for more than 2 decades because astrology has always made these promises. Astrology has always promised to give you the answers. Astrology has always promised that it can be practical and specific and useful. And it's never quite delivered on that promise for me. And I have gone to rather remarkable extremes to try to wring those answers out of astrology. And I have, questioned how we learn astrology and different techniques of interpreting astrology. And every time I would do this, I would make progress and see something promising and then hit a dead end where it's like, yeah, okay, that doesn't lead to where I thought it was going to lead. And a few years ago, in the midst of running a training program, I started coming up with this new set of ideas that I started calling the human game. And this was a new way of engaging with astrology. And I didn't quite understand what it was. I worked with this and developed it for more than a year before I was able to identify, oh, it's a philosophy. I was thinking, I was focusing on what it could do. It's a coaching model. It's a new way of working with astrology. Yes, but bigger picture, it's a philosophy. And the philosophy of the human game is based on the idea that the universe is made up of stories. So if everything is story, when you understand story, you can understand anything, including astrology. There's Facebook memes. This isn't my original idea. Oh, the universe is made up of stories. There's some lovely Facebook memes and quotes, and somebody else came up with that idea. To my knowledge, nobody has ever taken it and gone, okay, what the hell does that mean and how does it work? And that's what I've done. I said, okay, if everything is story, how do stories work? What are the levers of stories? How do you make a story better? How do you engage with a story? And what I've realized, the way that I found the solution is that astrology doesn't actually do anything. Astrology is a language, and it's a language that we can use to tell stories. But to really get astrology to work in a practical, engaging way, you have to understand how to tell better astrology stories. You have to understand how you can take an astrology story and connect it to your personal story. You need to understand how stories work. All stories operate on three levels. I got to give you a little context here. 3 levels of story. There is the plot level story, which is the external events. The title of the plot level story is Just the Facts, Ma'am. It is what happened. This is how most of us live our lives. We pay attention to the plot level story. Then there's the character level story. Title of the character level story is What's in It for Moi. And the character level story is all about you. The plot level story is what happened. The character level story is what happened to you. How do you feel about it? So it's related to the plot level story, but it's not the same thing. And then there's the theme level story. The theme level story, title of the theme level story is The Da Vinci Code. The theme level story is all made up. It is symbolic. It is mythological, it's archetypal. That is where you find the great big meaning and purpose of your life. Astrology operates at the theme level story. And you can look at astrology. The reason I love astrology and why it works so well with the human game, you can basically take some control over the story of your life. You're both the character in the story of your life, and you're watching the story in the audience, and you're also the person writing it. And when you work with astrology, you never, ever have to face a blank page. Any writer will tell you the scariest thing in the universe is a blank page. Your birth chart, the symbols in the birth chart, are this extensive, custom, personalized toolkit of story tropes. Things you can go, ooh, I'm going to take that little thing and apply that to this story in my life. And now I see a shape of it. And now it's got more meaning. Now I've got some strategies for how I can approach this. It's a tremendous amount of fun. It is incredibly practical. And for me, after more than 20 years of struggle, it's like, oh, this is what I've been working for. This is how you can use astrology in an empowered way, in a productive way, in a way that is it is fun and creative and both practical and at any level of story. And the irony is that it really isn't about, I mean, in a sense, I'm sort of agreeing with the critics of astrology saying, well, Mars doesn't mean anything. Of course, Mars doesn't mean anything. Everything is story. And thematically, these are the things that Mars represents. And then from a character level story, Mars represents Mars is your desire. On a personal level, Mars is your desire, your need for going after the things that you want. That's how Mars operates in you. And then in the external plot level story, Mars might represent a specific goal that you're going after. So you can map this out, see all of these connections in the story, and all of the sudden your day-to-day life has so much more depth and all of these dimensions because you understand what it means on different levels. You've got different options of engaging with things. You get to add meaning to your story. And, there's practical applications of this to understand how you're approaching a particular goal and what strategies are and how to anticipate obstacles. Just the potential of this is so vast. And it's taken me 2 years to get to the point where I have just this foundational little chunk where it's like, okay, here's the basics, here's the introduction, here's a way you can experience some of these stories for yourself so that you can understand that the thing that's got me so excited is something that actually could be real for you, and here's how. And then there's so much more that can be built on that.
I meant to ask you, what type of astrology do you specialize in?
I studied Western tropical astrology, and I very specifically focused on traditional astrology. There are multiple schools of astrology, and there's a great big complicated history, but there's been a renaissance of traditional astrology, and it separates it from modern astrology. But I want to sort of emphasize, and this is part of the change that I've had. For 20 plus years, I taught astrology. I no longer teach astrology. I teach how to tell better astrology stories. It doesn't matter what kind of astrology you use. It doesn't matter what approach or what system of astrology, because the astrology itself doesn't mean anything. You have to build a story around it, and then you have to take that story and connect it to your personal story. I've created, in my examples and what I use, the stories I like, the stories that I rely on, that give me usable answers, are using an astrological toolkit that is Western tropical traditional astrology. But I emphasize that it really doesn't matter, because when you understand how to tell stories, you can work with whatever type of astrology you like, because it's about the story. It's about connecting to you or the client, giving you an answer to a question, giving you a piece of the puzzle, giving you something that you can then take into your life and engage with, because that's really the only thing that matters. Ultimately, hopefully giving you something that's going to help you move closer to happiness, which is the first stop. And really all that matters is it a good enough story?
Well, I noticed on your website you mentioned happiness GPS.
Yes.
How would you describe that, and what is it?
Okay. The way that I sort of bring people into this whole how do you engage with and play the human game is the first big goal is you're trying to get to happiness. That's everybody's looking for happiness. Happiness is the thing that motivates pretty much everybody. And so the bigger framework of the story that I create is a way to get from where you are now to happy. And as a part of that, everything is story. So we assemble this story piece by piece, but a part of this story is what I call the happiness GPS, which is a set of stories that you employ when you are faced with an obstacle. When you are going after something that you want, you encounter an obstacle, you have to make a choice. The happiness GPS, which is based on either the moon or Venus, depending on what the obstacle is in your birth chart, gives you, as I say, turn-by-turn directions to the best possible outcome in any situation, because it's never about the plot level story. You encounter an obstacle, you're trying to make a decision, you're having a challenge in the outside world. But what you care about is happiness. Happiness doesn't live in the outside world. Happiness is a feeling. It lives inside you. But that's not terribly practical. And basically what you really want is everything you've ever wanted. So shaping a story of here's the best way of getting what you want, and also the best chance that getting what you want is going to make you happy. I give you a set of strategies of, okay, you've got this obstacle, you've got a framework of what's going on. Here are different things you can do right now that really don't involve how do I overcome the obstacle, but specifically, for example, involve how do I generate safety resources? How do I meet my safety need? How do I look at this story? How can I find some more safety right now? Because when you use the happiness GPS and raise the balance in your safety need account, and all of these are stories that need to be sort of assembled piece by piece to make sense. But when you raise the balance in your safety need account, all of a sudden you find an attractive option. Instead of going, I can't make a decision, I don't see a good outcome here, you use the happiness GPS, things miraculously shift. Oh, I'll do that. And that choice is going to give you the best possible outcome in that situation. You may not get what you want, but it's going to get you closer to being happy. And it may also help you. It's also the fastest way to get what you think you want, and coincidentally have a better chance of being happy when you get what you want, because of course getting what you want doesn't automatically make you happy.
Very true.
It can, but here's the thing. You can get what you want and be happy. It's just not a cause and effect relationship. So I've built this story using astrology and the human game that sort of goes, okay, here's happiness, here's how to get there. It's okay to get what you want. We're gonna help you to find the path where you have a decent chance of getting what you want, but you don't really care about getting what you want. You care about being happy. You can do both. We're going to do the happiness sort of behind the scenes with this while you think you're just going after and getting what you want. That's great. And it just, I call it's right there in the name. It's a game. It really is fun, and it makes your day-to-day life, your day-to-day choices. You can find the fun in almost anything. And fun isn't the same thing as happy. Happy doesn't mean what we think it means anyway. Happy doesn't mean you feel great. Happy just means you no longer feel bad, which is not a small thing. Happy gives you options. Fun, it's the chocolate sprinkles on the top of the ice cream. Somebody says, would you like fun with that? The answer is always sure. On its own, fun isn't terribly satisfying, but given the option of waking up in the morning, going to work, sitting at your job for 8 hours, or waking up in the morning, going to work, sitting at your job at 8 hours, and also having some fun, you're probably going to want to choose the fun.
You're also the author of more than a dozen books. So what are your books about?
I have written several astrology textbooks, a number of books and workbooks on human relationships, one very ambitious and ultimately fatally flawed statistical astrological research project, and a book called Anger Mastery, Get Angry, Get Happy, that sort of addresses kind of consciousness and spirituality separate from astrology.
So, Kevin, how can people contact you?
If you'd like to learn more, if you go to playthehumangame.com, there's a video there that gives you a more comprehensive exploration of the happiness GPS, and you can register for a free series of classes to learn more about the human game. You can also, if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, you can do that from that page. If you're interested in the astrology part of it, go to learnthehumangame.com. And both of those are different landing pages on my main website, which is therealastrology.com.
Kevin in Houston, Texas, USA, thank you very much for your time.
Nigel, thank you so much for having me.
Please join me. Interesting conversations with interesting people, featuring interviews with award-winning authors, relationship and life coaches, therapists, and a wide variety of people with intriguing stories to share. Interesting conversations with interesting people.
Please follow author Nigel Beckel's podcasts on Amazon Audible, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms. Thanks.